Hello and welcome back to Endstep, the Upkeep After Show. Last week we were all playing with companions, cards that are outside of the game in our sideboard because Commander has sideboards ? It was an interesting deck building restriction, a lot of fun. So of course, if you have not seen that game, go check it out before watching this video, and then come back, hear a little bit about this. So why don't we go around the table and just real quick, why did you want to build around the companion that you had? But I guess, Tommy, why don't you start, since you kind of have a different take on what you chose, right?
Yeah, so I didn't build this deck way back in season 1, the Christmas episode. This is one of the decks that Preston built for us to choose for the White Elephant, and it's a really fun deck and crazy powerful if it gets going, which it usually does. It's a damn good pair. It's really fun. It's really powerful, so I can definitely see why you would build around it. So I don't know. I guess that's my view on this pairing, at least.
Draws a lot of cards and a downside that's not very impactful in Commander. Jason, what made you choose Zerda?
Well, you had a Kenrith deck before, and you built it as a group hug deck. And when we decided that we were going to do companions as one of the episodes, I was just looking at all the companions out there. I saw Zerda, and I was like, I have that card. And then I read its ability, and I immediately thought about Kenrith. As I said, that could potentially be incredibly spicy. So I was all about, doing something really strong and powerful and spicy, and I thought that these two, as the commander and the companion, I thought that they would get me there.
Yeah, Zerda is one of the best cards in my Kenrith deck because it just makes using Kenrith's abilities a lot more realistic. For me, Umari, I've almost built Umari decks a few times. I've actually almost built enchantment decks around Umari, and I think if I was going to rebuild this, I probably would do that just to narrow down my options a little bit more. Might have been an interesting build design, but I just thought it was an interesting deck building restriction that seemed kind of fun, and I have a couple creature-y decks nowadays, but I don't have a lot of just big dumb stompy decks anymore, so this is kind of that deck. But Preston, what made you choose Luris?
So when I was looking at all the companions, I've kind of wanted to build like a little weenie deck for a while, one of those decks where you want the small creature specifically and you get a lot of value, and that's what Luris wants to do. So I knew pretty early on I wanted Luris, and as for going with Lotho, I thought about doing like a 5-color with the Friends Forever, or maybe 4-color. Those partner commanders, but I thought if everything was going to be 2 or less mana, that might be a little too difficult, so I just ended up going with a good value white-black one.
Yeah.
Keep it simple.
Cool. So when you had your deck building restriction, what were some things that you found that you had to adapt to make your deck a little bit more functional? Why don't you start us off, Preston?
I didn't really have that many issues. There's a couple things around maybe the 3 slot that I was wishing I could have put in here, but especially because mine only worries about the permanent cards, so like all my spells can be more than 2. So I didn't really have too many problems myself.
What about you, Tommy? I know that again, Preston built the deck. You got it via Christmas episodes, whatnot. But you've made a couple changes to it. What are some?
Yeah.
Do you even feel like that the 3+ mana value is a downside, or do you think that so little happens the first couple turns of Commander that maybe it's not that big of a deal?
I mean, it can. There are some still pretty good 1 and 2 drops.
Not having Soul Rings kind of.
I mean, yeah, Soul Ring, Arcane Signet. The Signets in general. I don't have Simic Signet. So I mean, stuff like that is really the only downside of like fast mana or fast ramp. Are really like and maybe small turn 1 creatures that can just chump block and keep me safe until I can build up are about the only downsides there really are to this deck. It's harder to find. I guess most counterspells are at least 3 mana though.
Yeah, I mean most of the good ones are like 2, but yeah. I mean, there are.
the good ones.
3+ mana.
The good ones are I mean, so the good counterspells and the good interaction. Around that tends to be a little cheaper, obviously, because cheaper generally means good in Magic. So, I mean, yeah. So it's really not, because of the way, like you said, the way Commander plays. It's really not too big of a restriction. Like there's rarely been. When I look at upgrading this deck, there's hardly any cards I think of that I'm like, oh, this would go great, but it's two. It's not 3 mana. It's only 1 or 2, and it's like, and that's really was when I was first upgrading. This was limited to like Soul Ring, Arcane Signet. Those auto includes anymore in commander decks that are cheap. I just can't, and that's not that big of a downside as we saw. So.
Right. And Jason, I know that you were saying pre-recording that you were sad that you couldn't put Urborg Cabal Coffers in your deck. But other than that, what was there any other weird things about brewing this deck that you were like, oh, well that's weird?
I mean, I couldn't put in Ristic Study. Sad face. I was really
So
upset
sad.
about that.
We are too.
One card that I wanted to put in here was Heartstone because it also makes my abilities cheaper, but it itself does not have an activated ability, so I can't include it in the deck. So really it was just going through cards, making sure that every permanent has an activated ability. And what a way to find out Urborg and Yavimaya technically don't have activated abilities until they're on the battlefield.
Yeah, for me, I found a really interesting loophole with the creature only restriction is that there's adventures. So it's a creature, but then they also they have an instant or a sorcery that you can cast that, exile it, and then you can play the creature again later. So that's a pretty interesting way to get around it, and it kind of makes the deck more flexible as well, which is kind of nice. It's like if I need a creature now, or if I can hold off for the creature, get the ability. Pretty nice. Otherwise, it was kind of awkward that the whole deck was just everything relies on my creatures. My card draw, creatures. My ramp, creatures. My frickin' board wipes, creatures. As we saw that dragon. Then there's also Sunblast Angel, which is probably not as good, but even my board wipes are creatures, which is weird. Yeah, it was a pretty fun build around, but I got to play some cards that I like that I haven't really got to play with before, or haven't got to play with in a long time, I should say. So are there any cool cards in your deck that you wanted to highlight that we didn't get to see? And then also, what are you thinking about with your decks in the future? Are you going to keep them together as with the companion? Are you going to take the companion out so you can upgrade the deck? What are you guys thinking as far as cool cards and or upgrade potential?
So for me, I think the two cards I wanted to point out most were Fell the Mighty, which is destroy all creatures with power greater than target creature's power. That's maybe the best board wipe in the whole deck, considering all my guys are so small. But I think maybe the best card in the entire deck overall is Reprocess. It's 2 and 2 black. Sacrifice any number of artifacts, creatures, or lands. Draw a card for each permanent sacrifice this way. Dump my 18 treasures and just draw half my deck,
That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
so good.
Sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
So that's probably the best card in the deck. As for upgrades, I mean, I really like this deck already, so
Yeah,
I'm
it's
definitely
cool.
going to keep it like this for a while at least.
I was excited to play against it. It seemed neat.
So I'll keep it like this for a while, and I'll decide later how I'm feeling about it, I think.
Yeah. What about you, Tommy?
So I mean, as far as cards I wanted to show, one we saw a good amount of, and we've seen before on the show, Walk the Eons. Target player takes an extra turn after this one. You can buy it back and sacrifice 3 islands. Probably the best card in the deck, I would venture to say. Just, take an extra turn and you can cast it a bunch of times as long as you have islands to sacrifice.
Yeah, especially in the mid to late game where you probably have an absurd amount of islands.
And we've seen it win the game. It didn't win me this time, unfortunately, partially because of a misplay with it, but that is neither here nor there. But when we didn't see that, I was
That's one
really
of the cards
sad because it's one of the
it's
one of the cards that Morgan stole from me that really worked out well was Thrix the Sudden Storm. This is one I added afterwards. It's a 4/5 with flash and flying, and it also says spells you cast with mana value 5 or greater cost 1 less to cast and can't be countered. So if you saw in there, the last time I tried to cast Walk the Eons, Jason countered it and therefore shut it off, even though not only causing me to lose this card and not be able to cast it anymore, but also sacrifice 3 of my islands because I had paid the buyback cost when I cast it. So if I had Thrix the Sudden Storm, he wouldn't have been able to counter that because it's a 6 mana spell. So I mean, that's one example where having him out can be very, very powerful in a deck that is all about really expensive spells that sometimes are cast for free because of Cascade. Because with Cascade, you're still casting it. So if someone wanted to counter a spell that I cascaded, Again, they couldn't because of Thrix if it was 5 or more. So I mean, it's just Thrix is a really good creature that I was very happy to find and put in this deck because he's really cool.
So the main card that I have in here that goes really well with Zerda is Basalt Monolith. So
Yeah?
if you can't tell, it's an infinite mana combo. It's colorless mana, but it's an infinite mana combo because Basalt Monolith, you need 3 to untap it. Zerda makes that 1. It makes 3, so you tap it for 3, use 1 to untap it. Now you have 2 floating, and you just do that over and over again.
Wow,
and then
you
with
broke
that,
Basalt Monolith. No one's ever done that before.
Wow.
no one ever. I'm the first guy. Yep.
Morgan has not done it on the show before. Yep.
Right.
Right.
And then, put that into a Staff of Domination and draw my whole library and gain as much life as I need or basically do whatever. One card that I really want to show off that, it's an example of cards that aren't normally very good, but they actually become pretty decent in this deck. Svella Ice Shaper. Mm-hmm. So Svella has an ability where you pay 3 to tap it to create a colorless snow artifact token named Icy Manolith with tap, add 1 mana of any color. With Zerda on the battlefield, that's 1 mana instead of 3 to make a mana rock. So pay 1 mana, tap it, make a mana rock. That's a pretty good ability.
That's pretty good.
Especially if I have like a Basalt or a Staff of Domination on the battlefield. Even if I don't have the Basalt Monolith, but let's say I could put some mana into the Staff of Domination and I can pay Svella's ability, I can make a couple different mana rocks on my turn. And then, it comes back around to me. Now I have, maybe twice as much mana as I had the previous turn or something to that effect. So these were really the main ones that I wanted to show off just because these are how I win. And then this is a card that's not very great most of the time, but in this deck it actually has a pretty good...
I've seen people build around her, and it seems good. But yeah, in this deck specifically, when you're going to have access to Zerda, we say access to Zerda, but ironically, all of the companions were exiled except for mine, and mine died pretty early, so that was interesting. This isn't a card I was going to highlight, but it just occurred to me that this would have been really funny against Tommy, is I do have Draenith Magistrate in the deck, and I just do it to, help shut off commanders and whatnot, just because, it's a good little hate bear, but in this matchup specifically, it would have been really funny because it would have kept kept the cascades from happening.
It would have shut down my deck, the main thing my deck wants to do.
That would have been kind of funny. A card that we didn't get to see this game, but I've played it, I think every other time I've played this deck, is Karametra God of Harvests. Whenever I cast a creature spell, I get to find a forest or plains to put onto the battlefield tapped, and it's any forest or plain, so I can grab my duels and my triomes and whatnot. And I believe all of my fetchable lands in this deck are forests or plains, so I have had this get to stick around and then just get me absurd amounts of land, so that card is really sweet. As far as upgrade go for this deck, I've thought about maybe making it full 5 colors, but that just feels excessive when I already have 2 5-color decks, so I might not do that. And then I used to have a Rocco Cabaretti Caterer deck that was like a Druid combo deck that I would use to steal my opponent's lands. It was really rude, but I thought, well, if I just cut black out of this deck, I could have it as the commander, but then I can't have Umari as the companion, which would probably make the deck better, because then I could run, sorceries and stuff to better fix my mana and whatnot. So that would make it better, but Umari is pretty cool.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a fun deck building restriction, so I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to stick to 4 colors. I could maybe go full 5 colors, but I'm probably going to stick with the 4.
I guess I do plan on keeping this deck together with Zerda as the companion because I think that it's really powerful. I think that it works well, and I just like being able to have access to Zerda whenever I want.
So last season, in season 1, at the end of the season, everyone got to bring back, for the last episode, everyone with the worst win percentages. So everyone except Jason, because Jason kicked butt. We brought back a deck that we felt like underperformed, and we got to give it one last chance. We're doing that again this season, and now we're almost at the end of the season. We're at the point where we were able to predict the outcome of who is in that game. It came down to Tommy had to win this game and the next game in order to not be in Revenge Week. But since he lost this game, doesn't matter what the result is for the next game. That means that Jason is once again sitting out for Revenge Week. He once again is proven out that he can squeak out more wins more often than everyone else. So with that said, do people know what they're bringing back for Revenge Week, or do you need another one more episode to figure out for sure?
You want me to go first?
I might bring this back. I really like this deck. I'm sad my companion got exiled really early, so yeah, I might bring this one back. I'm not sure yet, but this is a pretty high contender.
And Tommy, I think we know the answer, but
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. It's 99% gonna be Clavileño, the vampire precon commander from Ixalan, just because that deck just got to do a whole lot of nothing in that game, and so
It's a deck that needs revenge.
yeah. If I was going to try and no, I want to win that game, I would maybe bring this or the deck for the for the game that we haven't filmed yet, but will be the next one in the series, the Precon episode, because that's going to be Edgar Markov, which is a very powerful deck. And at that point, Revenge Week, I would upgrade it, and it would not be the Precon list anymore. So if I was specifically just trying to win the game, it probably wouldn't be that, because it's probably not the most powerful deck to bring back. But just because it got to do nothing, and it's such a cool commander and cool deck,
it is a cool
that I've played other times, and when it gets to do stuff, it's really cool. So just because I want to play it and show what it can actually do, that's probably what it's going to be. So
yeah, for me, I'm really torn. I want to bring back my life swap deck, but when I played it, it was mono black, and now it's black white, and now it's like
Just too different.
how similar is it to this kind of a thing?
So not counting the lands, it's like I think it's probably 80% the same.
Yeah.
So it's almost the same, but because it does have the extra color, I don't think people would recognize it as the same deck. So there is the option that I could just...
Because that gives it a different commander, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a different commander.
So that's the other thing.
Yeah, so there is a world where maybe I just... For that game, I rebuild the mono black version just because I like that deck so much. Yeah. So I might do that. My only other options are Osgear, which I played in the Artifact episode, which did fine. And then there was Quasar, which we played in Uncommon episodes, and that did fine. I don't have my Myriad deck together anymore, and I don't plan on rebuilding it. So all that to say is I have no idea what I'm bringing back for Revenge Week because all of even the games where I didn't win, I still did pretty good. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think I'm just going to wait till I for sure know what everyone else is bringing, and then I'll just bring whatever I think is going to be the most interesting game. Or like if someone's
going to meta game.
I was just about to say it. I was just going to say it.
It was more of like creating a new matchup. Like if I was going to if someone was bringing back, like if Steven decides to bring his Quain deck back, right? He played that on the same episode that I played the mono black life swap.
Right, yeah.
If he brings Quain back, I'm for sure not bringing back the mono black deck because we've already seen those two decks against each other before. That's not interesting for content's sake. So I have no idea because I feel like all my decks did okay. So and I'm not in next episode. So all of the decks you've seen me play this season, that's it for me. I'm not in the next episode, and the episode after that is the end of the season. So, but yeah, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed these videos. Make sure you subscribe. Like I said, only a couple more episodes left in the season. We will see you guys later. Bye.